Let's see here.
You got your mic?
Did I hide mine? No, I just don't have. Okay. Good morning and welcome to the emergency special meeting of the Utah State Board of Education, as authorized, excuse me, by Utah Code 52-4-7, 52-4-207. This meeting is being held electronically with an anchor location at the State Board of Education offices. The public may also attend electronically. For the public, we are holding this meeting because there were votes taken late last week and we had a significant number of board members request an early morning meeting to address House Bill 215. We scheduled it for this time because we have folks who are in the education system and elsewhere who are working, and with the short notice that was required, we had to do it this early so that folks could get to work. So thanks to all those who have been able to make it. I'm going to go through a roll call and make sure we have our members here either in person or online. So just please answer when I call the names out. Member Bogus. Present. Member Booth.
Good morning.
Good morning. Member Klein.
Good morning.
Member Davis.
Here, thank you.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Member Green.
Here.
Member Hart.
Yes.
Member Hymas. Here. Member Carey.
Here.
Member Lear.
Here.
Member Moss is here. Member Norton.
Here.
Member Reel. Here. Member Straight.
Here.
And Member Wood.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So, excuse me. We did not put out a specific request for public comment, but given the short notice and emergency nature of the meeting, we do want to make that available. So we're going to allow 2 minutes for public comment for anyone who would like to address the issue. The sole issue on the agenda is House Bill 215. I understand we have one person online, has not joined yet. So we're going to allow 2 minutes. Sybil, the parliamentarian, will keep time. I see Senator Reby approaching. Would you like to make a public comment? Okay, sure. And just please state your, I know I stated your name for the record, but just officially.
Thank you. My name is Kathleen Reby. I'm a senator from District 15. I'm a school teacher, and I was also a Utah State School Board member. I'm here today to speak against House Bill 215. I was at the USBE meeting on Friday, and I didn't meet a superintendent across the whole entire state that is in support of this bill. All weekend long, I received probably 1,000 emails asking me to not support this House Bill 215. We have rurals, we have urban people, we have people all across the state. I'm opposed to this bill because it has a lot of benefits for students that are attending private schools that don't transfer over to our public school students. People are like, teachers should just take the money. Teachers are not the type of people that leave kids behind or other teachers behind. We recognize that if one of us is going to succeed, all of us should succeed. We are passionate about keeping everyone safe and pulling us all ahead. Leaving people out and leaving people behind does not help our profession, does not help our kids. I urge you to vote no for this bill because it picks and chooses who should succeed and who should not succeed. So please join me in voting no. House Bill 215. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Other public comment, just please state your name when you come forward.
Okay, perfect. Hi, my name is Quincy Azimi. Thank you so much for allowing public comment on this bill. I recently moved to Utah 3 years ago, and I have loved the state. I moved here from Alaska, where they have a very similar program. I really thrived in public school. I loved my teachers. I had a great experience. My little brother, after COVID, really struggled with reading. He would come home, he's 9 years old, he came home every day crying. He did not fit in with his students. He felt like he was so behind in his classes, and he was so behind in his classes. My parents both worked, and we could not provide him the help he needed, and his teachers were too overwhelmed to provide him with that one-on-one care that he needed. With the scholarship that Alaska offered, we were able to help my little brother see a specialist, learn how to read. He has since returned to classes and is now thriving. He reads for fun, and he comes home every day happy and ready to play like any other kid. So there are students that are falling through the cracks, and I think any teacher can tell you that. We need this scholarship to tell them that it's okay that they don't fit in the system, and that they're not the problem, that they can have a customizable education. So please vote yes to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Chair, I have a question.
About a public comment or about process?
No, about public comment.
Okay.
So I was told I was supposed to have received over 100 emails, and I don't have even a fraction, not even 10% of that.
Well, let's come back to that as a process question.
Okay.
I do want to make sure the public are able to weigh in while they're here, so just introduce yourself and go ahead.
My name is Joe Johnson. I am a parent here in Utah, and I have come to speak on behalf of HB 215. 93% of people who attend public education are satisfied with that experience, and that is awesome. My kids have had great experiences inside of the system. An investment of $42 million to help those of the 7% who are not satisfied is a reasonable expense. It's a reasonable expectation that we understand that not everyone's needs can be serviced. While I have had many great experiences inside of the system, I have also had a few experiences that weren't great. I have a son who endured a chemistry teacher at Lehigh High School, I'll save the name, for a full year. My kids deserve to have a choice. I understand that there's many reasons amongst the board members to oppose or to have a vote against HB 215. I would like to remind you that inside of the bill, there are specific requirements that you as a board will need to enact from a policy and regulation standpoint. I think that is in very, very poor taste as a board to take a policy position on something that in a couple of weeks you could very easily be needing to enact policy on. To come in and tell those parents who are going to be a part of this program once it's enacted that, hey, we are opposed to that, I think is wrong. Parents deserve to have this choice. And frankly, teachers deserve to have this wage increase. To have the largest perpetual wage increase in Utah State history is amazing, and I am very grateful for that opportunity to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? We have our online sign up. Okay. Well, we probably need to move on. If they were planning to join, it's 1:15 now, so. I don't think so. Any other public comment? Okay. Okay, we have one agenda item, and that is House Bill 215. I don't have the title in front of me, but I think we all know it. Let's see. There we go. Funding for teacher salaries and optional education opportunities. We had a good opportunity on Thursday to hear a lot about the bill. There have been changes, and I'll just give a slight procedural update. Our staff and board leadership submitted a number of questions, concerns, proposed changes to the bill sponsors over the weekend, and heard back that they were considering those. There have been changes made to the substitute, and I know Deputy Superintendent Stallings is prepared to answer and explain those. And I guess we could do that as an information matter before we turn to motions, if that's okay. Deputy Superintendent Stallings, thank you.
Good morning, board members. Am I on? Okay, it's hard for me to tell. Doesn't sound very loud from here. Good morning, board members. Angie Stallings, Deputy Superintendent Policy, State Board of Education. There's three main changes I just wanted to highlight from the first substitute, HB 215, to the third substitute. They're all quite close together, starting at about line 353, which eliminates, you'll remember that when we discussed this bill on Thursday, the $8,000 amount that a scholarship student is eligible for would increase annually by the same percentage as the WPU that's awarded. That language has been changed to a 5-year rolling average inflationary factor, and it ties to the same language that we find in what many call HB 357, where the portion of the WPU that goes into the base budget each year is also based on that 5-year rolling average inflationary factor.
Point of information, Chair, that's okay.
Sure. And you want to direct it to Deputy Stallings?
Right, I thought that, maybe it was in my head, but I thought you said that Deputy Stallings was going to speak to proposed changes. She's just speaking to the third substitute, is that right?
Correct, yes. We
All
can
right.
also ask her, feel free to ask her about the proposed changes that are currently in the hopper with the sponsors.
But only proposed and no.
Proposed, correct.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that was forthcoming, and, oh no, I've read this one, so thank you.
All right, thanks. Go ahead, Deputy Stallings.
No problem. Just two more things. There's quick. So that's the first one. The second one quickly is that the third substitute added a requirement for a scholarship student to receive a prorated scholarship amount if the student participates part-time at their local public school or a charter school of their choice. And then the last thing is that it establishes an annual portfolio submission requirement for the student or the student's parent to provide to the program manager. And that's it. Those are the three major differences between the first substitute and the third substitute.
All right, any questions for Deputy Stallings while she's up before we turn over the floor to motions? Okay, well, the floor is open to motions then. Oh, sorry. Member Booth.
Thank you, Chair Moss. I have a motion for the board's consideration. I move that the board oppose House Bill 215, third sub, as currently written.
Motion's been presented and seconded. Motion before the board is that the board opposes the third substitute, HB 215, as currently written. Floor is open to discussion on that motion. We'll look for member lights or comments.
Chair Moss, may I speak to the motion?
I'm sorry. Yes, member Booth, before we turn it over, yes.
Thank you. My motion is a vote in opposition to House Bill 215 until the 50 concerns compiled by Deputy Superintendent Stallings from our last meeting and sent to the bill makers are responded to. There are many questions that need answers. Questions of accountability, of process, and of access. With this transparent opposition, we seek to invite critical dialogue. Of course, you'd expect that as a state board, we would morally oppose this bill because we've been elected to represent and advocate for public education for every child across the state, even the ones who have no parental support. House Bill 215 may simply be the straw that's breaking the camel's back, but there are many educational concerns that warrant a thoughtful conversation as we seek solutions. The message we wish to communicate is, if we all really support public education, let's talk. Let's talk in advance. Utah's children deserve the benefits of a rigorous conversation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, member Booth. Discussion then to that motion. Member Lear.
Oh, let Kristen go ahead, that's okay,
Oh, we've got member Norton up first.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about 215. We have a large state, and there are about 4 counties in our state that have private schools that are close enough for students to easily get to that private school. For the rest of our state, um, there is less than a handful of private schools out there for them to choose from. Instead, they have made their local school the center of their community. I was talking to a superintendent on Thursday who talked about a packed gym on a Friday night for a girls' basketball game, and he said, I think every person in both cities, it was their nearby rival that they were playing, and he said, I think every member of both communities was in that gym. He goes, that is our lifeblood, and that's where they want their children to be. Yet these people who are struggling financially as the economy is turning are going to be paying for this private school voucher bill across the state. As he talked to me, he mentioned that there's already a problem between these schools. They don't have many of the buildings, the classes, etc. And this is just one more hit that they are going to have to take from that. Um, it's so challenging to see. We hear every year about the challenges of education and funding, and yet here we are siphoning $42 million off of public education to put into private businesses. As I also have thought long and hard about this bill, and I wanted to speak for a minute to the teachers of our state. As many of you know, I am a teacher myself. I am a full-time classroom elementary teacher, today sitting in my classroom for this meeting. And to see a raise like this is something I've never seen in my lifetime. And it's a tough challenge to say, nope, I'll walk away from that. I am a single income household, and I raised my son as a single parent. And I know the choices that you have to make as a teacher when you are working at this pay. I accepted that when I took the job, and I've made those sacrifices. But I also know for our teachers what the last 3 years have been like. When after a hard day of teaching, you also vacuum your classroom, you take your trash out to the dumpster, you have an extra half hour of bus duty because the bus drivers are so limited that they're doubling up on routes, or they have a substitute that does not know the route. And I also know what it feels like to lose the heart of your school when your secretary leaves. So we are a confined community, and I think it is only right that we stand shoulder to shoulder with the other half of the education community that will not be receiving this raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Norton. I have Member Lear, then Member Klein, then Member Bogus, then Member Reel. I've got it.
You want me to
Go ahead, Member Lear. Yeah.
I oppose HB 215 for many, many reasons, and this is not a knee-jerk reaction on my part. I have read many voucher bills for many years. I mentioned in the House Committee the other day that I think I may be the matriarch of anti-vouchers, and I bear that title proudly. I'll just identify several reasons that are problematic for me in this bill. First of all, there's no accountability for taxpayers. I've heard a lot of talk about what parents want. Parents want this and parents want that. That is great, but there are, I don't even know what percentage of taxpayers. I know in my district it's very high. There are very many taxpayers who are not currently parents. And some of them will never be parents, but they're still taxpayers who pay willingly at least they pay into the education fund. And I think they deserve accountability. There are single people, college students, older people who contribute to the sustaining tax base. Nothing except one annual report and one audit that are minimally defined gives taxpayers information about students' competitive achievement, type of students served, spend plans. We're so big on spend plans for some things. Spend plans for parents' use of tax money, or even one standardized test. That's a problem that taxpayers deserve more information about a program that they pay into. This, the program manager is quasi-private and will never, grammar requests will fall by the wayside. So we won't be able to probe into the information on this program. Secondly, both program managers and providers can pick their students. The prohibition about discrimination is minimal, only, and I'll probably forget right now, but it's color, and ethnicity, and one more issue. Both the program manager and the providers can discriminate on the basis of religion, income, gender, past disciplinary issues, major and minor, of students, disabilities, and zip codes. These schools and providers select their students. Public schools, paid for with public money, take all students. Thirdly, and one of the speakers earlier alluded to this, there are multiple complicated responsibilities in this bill for the USBE. I read through the bill again last night. 33 times the USBE was mentioned. The state board was mentioned. And there has been zero consultation with the Utah State Board of Education. There's been zero discussion about what can the board, how will the board do these things? Are there ways that this could be tweaked where it's more doable for a very qualified body? But this is very complicated and sophisticated. If the duties are done objectively, the timelines are also very short. A legitimate RFP takes much longer than outlined in the bill. There's rule writing that may include public hearings. That doesn't happen in the timeline of this bill. And there's been much too little discussion with one of the major implementing entities for a $42 million program. I also have to add, in response to the earlier speaker, the state board has opposed, in my experience with the state board, which has been 40 years, has opposed other programs, but has always professionally implemented those programs if directed to by the legislature. There is no doubt in my mind that that will happen again. So I feel no conflict in expressing our concerns. The bill provides no protection against retroactive scholarship expenses. As the bill is written, a parent could bring a receipt for a computer that was bought 3 years ago, for a printer that was bought 3 years ago, for an expensive musical instrument that was bought 3 years ago, and seek reimbursement for that. There's no protection against that for taxpayers. Also, it says that the item, which could be inexpensive or expensive, has to only be used primarily by the student. So I'm in favor of enriching families who need things, but let's do it with transparency. Finally, student data. There's been a lot of concern in the years I've been on the board about student data privacy. There is no way that a program like this, involving at minimum 5,000 students and $42 million, can track the expenses, tuition, eligibility, transfers for distinct, discrete students without using unique student identifiers. It's absolutely impossible. And the state board could never, the state board staff would always implement something that's probably USIMS like to do that tracking. Program managers and LEAs, as both providers and just perhaps if dual enrollment is really a part of this, must also ensure that voucher students do not and cannot enroll in public schools. This requires an SSID number and student data. So to pretend that there won't be student data concerns and issues is a fool's errand. So with that, I oppose HB 215, third substitute, as written.
Thank you, Member Lear. Member Klein.
Yes, good morning. I also oppose HB 215. And I'll tell you, when I ran for this position, that was one of the things that I was very clear on, that school choice, the way it works, ends up homogenizing schools across the board, much like standards have homogenized education as it is already. So I do like the idea of school choice. We have it, but it requires work and sacrifice on the part of our families. And that's something we can't escape unless we want somebody to control those choices, which is what this bill does. So first off, it's not the proper role of government to grant economic desires or to control for economic outcomes, but it is our role as government to protect and serve the constitutional liberties, or protect and secure, the constitutional liberties that allow for people to create their own opportunities. It also encourages government dependency instead of self-reliance. There's also no protections in the bill against inappropriate content, which means our taxpayer dollars will continue to fund education curriculum and content that many believe is immoral and anti-American, the very things many families are trying to escape in the current system. Public funds being infused into private spaces forever redefine private as public, so that there will be no way to escape to if they don't like the public system, because everything will be public. Vouchers, ESA scholarships, whatever we want to call it, government-funded private choice is what it is, and is a major move towards a single-payer socialized education system that destroys true choice in education. This new system is being put under the general control and supervision of USBE, the ones that have had the control and supervision over the old system that has been captured via standards, assessments, and accountability. This tripod of control is the noose that suffocates and kills innovation, choice, and freedom in educational content and curriculum. There is no true choice when all content and providers must be government approved. There is no true innovation when government approved quickly turns into standardization, which is required for the sake of efficiency of a system that requires equitable outcomes from all and shuns any differences in outcomes as deficiencies rather than seeing them as natural and normal evidence of the naturally occurring diversity of the human race. Anything government funded requires government accountability both for spending and for learning. This is done through overt or embedded assessments that produce data and as the evidence that the student is learning what the standardized state-funded system requires them to learn, or in this case, by way of a portfolio, which will eventually be in the form of digital backpacks that follow the child like a ball and chain wherever they go to prove that they are learning what the government wants them to learn. They will not be able to escape accountability to the state so long as state funds are involved. Accountability to state-approved standards, curriculum, instructional content, and services are easily controlled by whoever gets to define and decide who counts as a qualified provider. The very mechanisms built into this bill are the same ones that have made public education an unacceptable and untenable choice for so many families in our state that are now looking to escape it. Again, I will not be voting in favor of this bill or any other publicly funded school choice bill in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Klein. Member Bogus, and then I've got members Reel, Straight, and Hymas on deck, or bullpen, whichever you may prefer.
Thank
Member
you.
Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask Deputy Stallings a question?
Certainly.
Deputy Stallings, do we have dissolution codes in this state? There are many, many states across the nation, but I'm just wondering if we have them here. I cannot find them.
And I am not sure, Board Member Bogus, what do you mean by dissolution codes?
So by dissolution codes, I mean that, for example, if a rural school district goes below a certain threshold in terms of student enrollment, then what would happen specifically at the 912 level, I'm thinking of one state in particular, at the 912 level, if your student body falls below a certain threshold, the state moves to dissolve you and push your student into the neighboring district. And then ultimately, rural schools close. In one state, they closed in 2002. They closed over 50 rural schools just through their dissolution codes alone. And I'm just wondering if that exists, if I've just been unable to find it, what your thoughts are on that.
Thank you for that additional context. I don't believe we have anything like that in Utah in code that automatically dissolves or would require a district to either combine with another district or to close a school. So,
Okay, so then, Chair, may I?
Please, go ahead.
Awesome. So I'm not going to repeat what Member Lear and other members have stated. I think sometimes we come to the table and we agree on things for very different reasons. And so, Member Klein mentioned some things that are super important and very important to consider. One of my biggest issues with this piece of legislation that has not been mentioned is the ability for parents who receive this scholarship to request reimbursement for real property that can then be resold for market value. And there is, though it has been said to me, there's a restriction on that. I presently cannot find that in sub 3. And so I take issue with the fact that we can use these funds for the purpose of purchase of real property, and then that property, when it's no longer used, can then be resold. And then I would just offer that as a whole, I do not believe that this bill can be amended into good public policy. I think it's deeply flawed. I don't think it's been fleshed out in its entirety, and as such, I would stand to oppose sub 3 as currently written.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Member Reel.
Thank you. Thank you to leadership and to staff for accommodating this important emergency meeting. I'm new here, and I want to be clear that I pride myself in being a person who will vote not for a particular political party, but what's best for the community. I believe in people and good policy over politics, and I especially believe in the principle of representation. To me, House Bill 215 just simply isn't good governing, and this type of legislation doesn't serve the people of Utah. Utah is a place I defend because I've always seen Utah as a place of compromise, thoughtful governing, true fiscal conservatism, and a unique place that is never swayed by any national movement or platform. This bill shows that we are no longer that place. This legislation was purposely sped up without collaboration, without proper assessment, and filled with unrealistic expectations for stakeholders, especially for the Utah education system and our staff. As a teacher, I love analogies, so I'm going to give you one today. I have two passions, public lands and education. So if HB 215 was a public lands bill, let's pretend it was a bill made to siphon water out of the Great Salt Lake. This water would then be handed to a private program manager who distributes the water to private entities. The legislation would also be asking the water to be tracked to every private entity that they distribute it to. The entities, by the way, that are not held under the same standards as the Great Salt Lake Preservation Plan. And this bill would tell those worried about the shrinking lake that moving the water will actually help eliminate drought. And each drop removed from the lake would cost $8,000 of taxpayer dollars that had been originally allocated to save the lake. The complexities alone are frightening. I can't even imagine. I've spent over 15 years working in digital marketing, creating systems and processes for students, following FERPA and accessibility rules, navigating the technical security requirements, as well as making simple process that supports collecting good data to make strategic decisions. From the Salt Lake Community College and Utah State application for admission to degree planning software. And I cannot imagine the technological task to create this system, a system that is tracking tax dollars and requires transparency. I can't fathom the cost to build this system, millions of dollars to build a system to manage this. These system complexities are one of the many pieces of legislation that has not been thoughtfully considered. We're fast tracking a bill that is as complex as tracking every drop of water taken out of the Great Salt Lake, a body of water we need to save the Utah ecosystem. We need that lake, and we need a strong education system to support the future of our state. Overwhelmingly, the education community has spoken out against this bill. Parent groups, education organizations, administrators, and teachers have organized and publicly spoken in opposition. Groups with very different viewpoints and missions have come together in opposition. And it's hard for me when I think about good governing to sit here as board members elected to oversee the state of Utah's education system and not stand with our partners in education. How can we refuse to listen to our educators, parents, and administrators, Utahns who elected for us to serve them by making decisions to support our public education system? House Bill 215 was purposely fast-tracked while holding our educators' raise as hostage, a bill without adequate fiscal examination, without consideration of the entities that will be held responsible for oversight, and without time for public comment and comments from stakeholders. What type of democratic governance is that? That isn't good governing. And House Bill 215 is not the Utah way. The Utah I know would take time to make the most responsible decision for our tax dollars and for our students. We would collaborate, compromise, and work together, even if it meant delaying this bill to do what is best for our state. Beyond the list of fundamental policy flaws in this bill, I'm disheartened by the blatant disregard to the Utah system of education, the State Board of Education, local school boards, educators, and administrators in writing this bill. It's like making a plan to save the Great Salt Lake without consulting one scientist, climatologist, or the state's governing environmental agencies. We can do better. We can work together. Let's provide input on this legislation, and let's get back to the Utah I know and love. I oppose House Bill 215, third sub, and I'm grateful for the privilege to publicly say so. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Reel. Member Straight.
Thank you, Chair. Last Friday, as I observed the debate and the vote in the House of Representatives on House Bill 215, Representative Karen Peterson stood and offered the third substitute, which was then voted on and passed. As part of her discussion, she told the body that she was going to vote yes, even though she had voted no in committee, but that she was going to continue to lean in. My purpose today is to lean in further, and that is why I oppose House Bill 215. I would like to say that a path has been provided. That leaning in, that's our opportunity. We get to lean in. And I believe, after having reviewed and been in the room where the superintendents, simultaneously with myself and Board Member Lear, saw the final vote and the frustration of being left out of the discussion. They were not at the table. We were not at the table. Now, I would like to offer up something else to think about. We voted on this 3 years ago. Actually, it was voted on as a bipartisan. The Utah Senate voted 26-2, 1 not present. The Utah House of Representatives voted 67-5, 3 not present, for putting Amendment G on the ballot. This was in 2020. Okay, we all know about 2020. At the time, I remember a photograph, and I actually tried to find it because I wanted to see that photograph of all the education stakeholders coming together and coming to an agreement on how to meet the funding imbalance. Well, we're back at the funding imbalance again. And we're going to need to sit down again, and we want to be at the table. But being afraid and stepping back and saying, well, we got to be nice because we won't be at the table. Things are moving, things are thawing. And it's not because of the actions of us. It's because of the actions of the JLC, the Joint Legislative Committee that met on Friday. They put out their press release. They got the ball moving. If they had not done that, we would be at the same place we were on Friday afternoon. Here's something else about that. I was looking up articles and reading about Amendment G. This board was fully on board. These are the groups that argued in favor and supported Amendment G. The Utah State Board of Education listed number 1. Number 2, the Utah School Boards Association. Number 3, the Utah School Superintendents Association. Number 4, the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools. Number 5, the Utah Public Employees Association. Number 6, the Utah Education Association. I forgot what number I'm on. Number 8, Utah PTA. Number 9, Utah Taxpayers Association. Now, we're not exactly that solid this time, but it's pretty solid. And we need to be aware of that. I'm not going to belabor some of the other points made, but I would like to say that as a first-generation graduate, along with my two brothers, both older and younger, education saved our lives. And public education did. I can still sing the song, my high school fight song. I won't, though, but I'd like to.
We do need to give time
But anyway,
for other members.
I will finish soon. But I would like to point out that funding teachers is excellent. Funding education is better. I feel a personal affront to the idea of linking teacher salaries into a voucher bill. Personally offended. I feel like I'm being extorted. We have what's called the WPU. In the sea of education, the biggest boat is teachers, and increasing teacher salaries is important. But we need to raise all the boats in education, all the boats. And the best way to do that is through the WPU. We cannot lose track of the fact that we've had double-digit inflation in the state of Utah. That affects education just like it does everyone else. We need to support the WPU. That needs to be increased. We need to raise teacher salaries, absolutely. Let's do both through the WPU. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Straight. Member Hymas. Actually, if I could just cut in, we had somebody drive. We have 2 more public comments that were not here, and I do want to just deviate a little bit from normal practice because this is an unusual meeting, and I want to make sure they're able to be heard and then come back to board member comments to the motion. Do we have Jamie Renda? Is it on Zoom? Okay, yeah, let's do that. And we also have, I understand, a Bridget from Ogden. If you're here, we can turn to you second. I think those 2 we've been notified about. If you could come up and be on deck. Do we have Jamie? Why don't we go with Bridget then and come back to Jamie? Is this Bridget coming up? Yeah, if you could approach, introduce yourself, and we have 2 minutes for public comment.
Hello. First, I would like to say good morning. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Bridget Middleton. I'm with Growing Unified Development. It's my organization that I'm a part of. I'm a native of Ogden, Utah. I did go to public schools when I was younger. And what I seem to notice is that times have changed. We're in 2023. Things that we did in the past, we can no longer stick to. We have to adjust with the times. The children are falling through the cracks in the schools. It just needs to be a change, a significant change to help the children so that they can grow and be the adults that we would hope them to be, the best that they can be. Living in a box limits everyone from being able to reach out and do things to help themselves to be better people. I just know that these are children of God. They're God's children, and we have to support them in any way that we can. It's very important for a child to be able to express themselves, not being able to concentrate on schoolwork because of different aspects of the neighborhood or like bullyism or I'm just thinking off the top of my head. Those are things that when I was growing up, I didn't really have to deal with. Children wanting to commit suicide, things of that nature makes it very hard to concentrate on schoolwork. I feel if the public schools receive 10,000 for one child and the new thing that's on the table to be offered is 8,000, that's 2,000 in difference. I just think that we need to put the children first and everything else second, so that they can have a chance in life to be and become adults that they would like to be, instead of being in a box and limited. And so I do thank you for your time, and I pray that everyone has a blessed day.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
joining us. Appreciate you making the effort. We have online, I believe on Zoom, we have Jamie Renda? Okay. All right, Jamie, we can see you. We're just working on the sound, I believe. Can you try speak for us, Jamie, and see if we can hear you? Give your microphone a shot if you could.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're on. 2 minutes. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, you're welcome. I have had children both in public school and charter school. I've homeschooled. I value public school. One of my children graduated valedictorian at Ben Lomond High School and had an excellent experience there. And so I'm not opposed to public school. I just want to make that clear. But testing, can you not hear me?
We've got you.
Okay.
We can hear you.
But do I need to start over, or did you hear the first part?
No, we got it all. You're doing great. Thank
Okay.
you.
Testing is not accountability. And as I look year after year, the same people in our testing were failing our minority populations, our poor, our lower income. And I just feel like we need innovation to see if we can do better by these children. There's sometimes school just doesn't fit. I had one child the school wasn't working for that I homeschooled, and we just need to give parents as many opportunities as possible to do the best for their children. And parents do know what is better for their children on that. So anyway, I just would ask the school board to look at this. It's only a small portion of the budget to see if innovation can be created with this scholarship, and see if we can better meet the needs of some of the children that are falling through the cracks.
Thank you. Okay. Appreciate those folks for joining us today on short notice. And we'll go back to member comments. We had member Hymas, Davis, and Wood.
Thank you. Can I just ask, we had discussed that, or it had been mentioned that there was maybe some things in the pipeline, and that maybe we could ask questions about that. Is that appropriate this time?
Certainly. I think those would be for Deputy Stallings, if that's okay. Sure.
You ready? Okay. They're not tough. I just want to make sure you're ready. The 42 million that we're discussing here, what happens if this bill, not this motion, but if this bill fails? Where does that 42 million go?
Thank you, Chair. May I?
Please, yes, thank you.
Just with all appropriations or funds, it would remain or be held by the legislature and I'm not sure right now in which fund they have those, the money reserved, but it would just be there ready to be appropriated or held for a future year to be used. So it just remains kind of static or on hold.
Can I just
follow
go?
up? Certainly.
Okay. To be used by the USBE, by us as a USBE, or by the legislature?
By the legislature. So if the bill does not pass, that money sits in a fund that the legislature has, and until that money is appropriated to the State Board of Education, it would not be in our possession. So if this bill were to fail, that money would stay with the legislature until they appropriated it for another purpose.
So straightforward, this is not our money.
Currently, it's the state or the legislature's money.
Okay. It's I hear you, it's the taxpayers' money, but it's not, when I say it's not our money, I mean it's not USBE's money. I'm trying to distinguish the difference between what my role as a USBE board member is, and then as a taxpayer, what my personal thought, anyway. I'm just curious. These are just questions, right? So if the bill fails, the money stays with the legislature. I would love to see, as all of us, hopefully they'd say, hey, USBE, this bill didn't pass, here's 42 million, but probably not likely. Okay. We've heard a lot about accountability, or the term accountability today. Can you tell us, Deputy Stallings, and I'm sorry, you're the voice here, I'm sorry. What does accountability look like with this bill? If you can just give us a quick summary.
Great, yes, thank you. The third substitute added new language that requires the parent or the student who's participating in the scholarship program, to submit a portfolio. And I was just going to read the actual language. To maintain eligibility, a scholarship, and this is on lines 369 through 372 of the third substitute. To maintain eligibility, a scholarship student or the scholarship student's parent shall annually complete and deliver to the program manager a portfolio describing the scholarship student's educational opportunities and achievements under the program for the given year. And so it's not, I'm sharing that because I believe that is what the legislature has chosen for accountability. It's hard for me to speak for the sponsors to say, do you mean that to be an accountability measure? I will state, it doesn't state that will be made public to the public or to the taxpayers. So it's kind of up to you on whether or not that is an accountability measure. At least it's a program requirement for the recipients to provide information to the program manager on how the funds were used.
Thank you. I agree that there are a lot of issues that are, they've been discussed here. There's not anything to ignore. One of my biggest frustrations as I read through this and hear different comments is innovation. We always discuss innovation. We say that we want innovation, but we really don't want innovation, right? Because what happens is we see things that, to our public comment, they step outside the box, and we as USBE a lot of times say, whoa, that's not good. It might affect us, right? Well, this is one of those things that might affect us. But again, it's one of those things where we look at what is our role as a USBE. We do protect public education, but this isn't talking about public education. Is that true? This is talking about private or homeschooled people who have stepped away from public education for the most part, right? So innovation is always on my mind as to say, do we really want innovation, and how do we allow innovation? Deputy Stallings, what would this look like? How would we know if this innovative idea failed? How would we know, and how long would it take? Do you know? I know. I'm sorry. Please.
Deputy Stallings, thanks.
Sure. That is a loaded question that I believe many people at USBE might have a more informed answer than I would. But I'll just state it often takes some time for any program to evaluate and to determine the effectiveness. And I know that's one thing that our staff have raised. One of the duties in this bill is for the State Board of Education to provide an annual report on the cost effectiveness of the program. And as to the general effectiveness, how it's supporting a lot of other elements of the student or in the family, we could go into. But I do know that as staff, we have asked ourselves, what does that mean? What does it mean for the state board to provide a report on the cost effectiveness of the program to the legislature? So I think the question you just asked is something that the state board, you all will be weighing in on it and trying to determine that as we support the legislature, program manager, the families on that question if this bill passes in the future.
May I?
Sure.
I'm
Follow
trying to
up?
wrap up. I know that I've seen the bill, I've read it, but how involved is not involved, how involved has the USBE been in putting this together, but how involved will the USBE be if this passes? How much of it is the legislature and how much is put back on the USBE?
Please.
I think that that is something that none of us know at this point, and it's something we will learn as we go. This is a new type of program, although we did have the special needs scholarship program, and we do have the Carson Smith scholarship program. This one is very different than both of those. And I think what will likely end up coming to USBE, my experience in watching new programs develop, is at first the legislature or others do not want the state board to dictate anything in rule beyond the basics. And then questions will come up. And then there will be these issues of, like, for example, I'll just give one as an example in the Word document. If a student participates or enrolls in an LEA, and that LEA also happens to be an eligible service provider, does the LEA claim WPU? What does the LEA get to choose whatever amount of a fee they want? Does that fee violate the constitutional requirement that LEAs not charge fees to students who are in elementary school? And I can tell you, there's so many different ways that that could go. And the question is, does the program manager make that decision? Does USBE make that decision? And that's going to impact our LEAs. It's going to impact potentially double funding students. It's going to impact how much do you prorate the 8,000. And I know that that sounds like a very simple thing. I can tell you that that would take hours and hours of staff time debating potential options for that. And the question will be, will the legislature support the state board clarifying that in board rule? Or will we be chastised and brought up to admin rules if we do try to clarify that? Will the program manager feel comfortable making those calls, and will LEAs respect a program manager's decision versus the state board? You can see the complexity just in that one question of whether LEAs will charge fees, how they charge fees, will they continue to collect funding under the, continue to submit membership for that student, and how all of that works out. And the question will be as well, what will the relationship with the program manager and the USBE be? Is there an expectation that the State Board of Education be in constant communication with the program manager to resolve issues like this? And what staff will be able to do that? Because I personally, in order to be enough informed about the program to help make those policy decisions or to make recommendations to the board, we need somebody who's going to have a lot of knowledge of the program and all of these issues. And it's not a quarter of an FTE time. It's more than that.
Thank you. Just one final comment, not question. Thank you, Angie. You've been fantastic. I see the concerns. They're glaring, right? This is not something that's like, oh yeah, it's almost ready. It's 80%, 90% there. It's not. I get that. I also see taxpayer money, an attempt to be given back to taxpayers, those that sometimes get left out or fall between the cracks that has been brought up in public comment. And I support giving taxpayers their money in all areas. And this goes to teachers, which is interesting. I know it's been discussed already, teachers and this being clumped in one, not a big fan either. But I do see this as an attempt to give back and to innovate and try new things. It's not ready yet, and I understand that nobody likes a fence sitter, but anyway, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Hymas. Member Davis, Wood, and then Carey.
I just want to start by saying I support teachers and salary increases. I support school choice, and I think that we have shown that here. We have students that can choose district schools, charter schools, online schools. We've supported private schools and homeschools through our SOEP state online education programs. We have supported choice and innovation in all of those. And to further support innovation, we have people can request waivers from current rules. And we also have all the regulatory new sandbox legislation. So there is opportunity for all to innovate in this space at this point. I also support the motion to oppose third substitute HB 215 as currently written, because there are more questions than answers as this is currently written. I mean, it is, I don't even know how you could support it at this point. We don't even know what we're getting into when we read it. I will say this, there are a lot of things that have been said in this meeting. I just want to be really clear that not every student is getting $10,000 in the state who's going to a public school. The only unrestricted funds that a student is getting is $4,038. So I think we need to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. It's hard for me to look at one parent and say, your child can get $4,000 guaranteed for sure to attend a public school, and your child can get $8,000 to attend a private school. So I do think there's some disparity in the numbers there, but that's not even my biggest issue. My biggest issue, honestly, is that we have learned as a state board, when we are given partial oversight, it comes back to haunt us every time. We've learned it with TSSA, we've learned it with the special needs scholarship opportunity, and we're told only A, B, and C, and then when things go awry, we have legislators come back and say, well, why did you let D, E, and F happen or fall through the cracks? It doesn't work. So give us none and put the whole thing under the state treasurer or something, or give us oversight, but don't do this program manager. I hope I'm not misstating, from what I remember the last time, we under previous code could set up a foundation that could run a program like this through the USBE and be audited to the granular level by our internal audit or the Office of the State Auditor or OLAG or anybody, and they can be fully transparent to the public. And that way we don't have to answer these. Well, we don't know because we can't see all the details because we've been limited in our oversight. So that's one of my biggest concerns, amongst others that have been mentioned today. But I think we have to be really careful here to say, if you oppose the bill as it's written currently, that you're not put into a box as opposing teacher salaries or school choice or innovation or any of these other things that are very important, as our board members have mentioned previously. But I do support the motion to oppose HB 215 as currently written.
Thank you, Member Davis. Member Wood.
Thank you, Chair Moss, and thank you, leadership, for allowing this meeting to happen. I think valuable information is happening. I also oppose HB 215 sub 3 as currently written and agree with the rationale from Member Booth. Agree that we need to have the conversation, but it's unfortunate that public education was not invited to the table to determine how to best move forward. As a parent, one of my children struggled with the environment of his traditional junior high, and he begged me to allow him to come home. And as a traditional public school mom, this was hard for me, but I needed to do what was best for my child. We placed him in an online charter school, and I appreciated that we had choices to send him to an online accredited school. In the current version of this bill, I'm not seeing protections or accountability measures to guarantee that the eligible service providers are providing a quality educational experience for our students. I'm especially concerned about our rural areas. How do we guarantee that our families will not be taken advantage of by what I kind of call pop-up vendors in our rural areas, where now they come in quickly, they set up, there's no longevity, there's no resource to see that they're actually going to provide a quality experience for our kids. And so I say choice is important to our parents, but I would say quality choice is critical for our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wood. Member Carey, are you with us online?
I am. Good morning. I just wanted to speak in opposition to the motion. And like Board Member Reel, I am new to the board, and I have visited with public school principals and teachers in private schools, charter schools, micro schools. And I've met with parents and students all over my district. And whenever I go to a school, I ask the teachers, why do your students leave or why do they come? And I always thought the answer would be centered on academics, right? Well, they're coming here because they weren't getting the education they wanted or that they deserve at the school they were at. That has never been the number one answer I have heard from an educator as to why students decide to stay or leave. And without fail, the number one answer that I have received is that the student did not feel safe in the school that they were in. And I've never pursued that. I've never asked the follow-up questions. Well, was it physical violence? Was it bullying? What was it? But it was this feeling that that student was not safe. And we all know that no one can learn in that environment. You cannot effectively learn if you're always looking over your shoulder because you don't feel safe, you're concerned about being bullied. And I know I've shared this before, but growing up, my mom didn't look like the other mothers, right? She was Korean. She didn't talk like the other mothers. And kids can be vicious, unintentionally so. And I think that 215 provides the opportunity for those students who are not excelling. And it's not about because the schools are failing, but it's just not the right fit. And if we can find those students an environment where they can excel, that's not just a good thing, that's a great thing. I read that with the $42 million, assuming that this passes, the average would be about 4 students per public school for the 5,000. That 4 students in every school would have the opportunity to pursue this scholarship if you divided it among all the schools. My hope would be that no student would want the scholarship, that every student would feel great and safe in the school that they're in. But to the extent that that is not happening, this bill and these funds would provide that opportunity. And I think that's a great thing. And I also think that the funding of the teachers, I heard the term extortion used earlier today. And I don't look at it that way. I look at it as though we want to make sure that our public school teachers understand that they're valued. And this $6,000 is to show them that. And it's my understanding, and maybe Deputy Stallings, if I may, Chair Moss, Deputy Stallings, is that $6,000 in perpetuity, or is that just one and done?
Go ahead, Deputy Stallings.
Thank you. So the $6,000 for the educator salary adjustment is what I believe you're referring to, Board Member Green. And the Carey. Thank you. Sorry.
I'll take Green.
They're
I'll
right. They're right. You're right next to each other on the screen that I'm looking at. I apologize. Board Member
He's going to
Carey.
be insulted because I look nothing.
So this educator salary adjustment, the original appropriation, I believe, occurred many, many years ago, probably 15 or so years ago, and it has remained the same $4,200 amount since its inception. So I do not see anything in the bill right now that brings that 42 or now $8,400 above the line and increases with inflation. So the way the bill it is written right now, it would be stagnant, meaning it would stay at that $8,400 amount until the legislature decided to increase it through an appropriation or put something in statute to have it increase automatically.
Member
Thank you.
Carey, does that
It's ongoing.
conclude your comment, or did you have more?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. Member Earl had a light on.
I would like to make a substitute motion. I'd like to make the motion to take a position of neutrality and direct staff to continue to work with the sponsors to address institutional concerns and implementation.
I'll second the motion. Sorry, second. Member Earl?
And I just want to speak to that. I think there are, and I still have a number of concerns associated with the bill. But there are some of the items here that I wanted to address. There is a difference in accountability when a parent is accountable for the education of their children. And so, you know, to shift that responsibility partially back to a parent themselves carries a different kind of outcome and a different kind of weight. I do appreciate the portfolio mechanism in here because I think it does allow, if you've had to submit a portfolio before, it does allow for the intent of the education that's taken place without the granular data collection that a lot of parents are concerned about, that public school often has for that, or our traditional schools. I do have a question on our other scholarship programs currently. Are we seeing significant negative impacts to our local districts associated with these scholarship programs? I'm not familiar with any, and that's why I'm asking.
Well, and that's a bit of a loaded question, Member Earl, also
Okay.
about what that impact would be. But I will say we have, I believe, a little over 1,100 students who are currently receiving the Carson Smith Scholarship program. And then the Special Needs Opportunity Scholarship program is much less than that. I want to say less than 100. So it's about maybe 1,300 students total who are currently participating in those two programs.
Okay. And there's just a couple of other items that were mentioned out here I just wanted to quickly hit, and then if anybody wants to speak to this. There are pop-ups that happen in public education too. So this is not an uncommon thing. So I think we need to address that and just say, oh, it'll only happen if we start something new. No, we actually we see it frequently, and we have issues with that. What was the other? I just think, in my view, I think we want to continue the discussion and continue the dialogue with the legislature. They've been working on it for 2 years. I think that there needs to be continued dialogue around this, and that I think we can. I just think we can help in doing that, and that we're not left out of the conversation as we move forward. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Vice Chair Earl. Any discussion to the substitute motion? Member Green, did you have your hand up for this motion?
I did, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I just want to speak to just a couple things. First, I guess on the first motion, just agreeing that on the second part of Member Booth's motion about being able to look into developing it and continuing conversation around that, where Member Earl just made that motion, I would actually agree with that based off of a lot of the information that we've personally been discussing today as a board. Addressing just a comment that came from Member Hymas, I too invite and welcome innovation, and I also kind of feel the same way in when innovation is presented. I feel it's quickly smothered. On that note, I do think that, you know, industry is important, competition is important, keeping things relevant is important, and I feel like our industry as a whole is definitely, just because of the nature of change, we are seeing that. And 2020 definitely pushed all of us into that realm with being able to be on school, you know, online, all of the programs, curriculum-based companies that developed those features Also, I think with people being home, some people realized that maybe that was more of an option that they wanted to take. So I do think that this bill is trying to address something that is manifesting in our society as a whole. And so I do think it requires and demands a little bit more conversation and collaboration. A couple of the things that I'm a little bit frustrated off is how we are tying teacher pay with public or private and homeschool options. I'm not haven't been able to sort that out quite yet. Maybe I haven't just talked to the right people still. That's just one controversy, but in my mind, the other thing is there's the argument being placed that USBE doesn't have anything to do with this. However, as previously mentioned by another board member 32 times throughout the bill, that USBE is required to be a part of this. So we are definitely, my understanding and reading of the bill, involved with the oversight or the involvement of that. So I would like to continue the conversation. I think that if that's being asked of us, it requires more understanding. I too have more questions than not about how this actually works as far as the infrastructure and the legality, the accountability, the funding, the tracking of all of that. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Member Green. Member Klein, I think, is up next.
Okay, I would speak against the motion. I just want to point out that on line 708, it says nothing in this part grants additional authority to any state agency or expands the regulatory authority of the state. I want to just point out that it doesn't have to grant additional authority. As a board, we already have plenary powers for all of public education. And so anything that's publicly funded falls within our constitutional powers to govern and control, have that general control and oversight of, according to the Utah State Constitution, Title 10, and Rulemaking Act in Title 63G, Chapter 3. So when they say that they're limiting our powers, I counted far more the state board shalls than, and there was only 3 state board may nots. And then there were several state board may, and anything not defined on one of those is open for, it's open season for us to do whatever we want. So this, the way this bill is written, by no means limits our power and ability. And that, to many, is a grave concern. I think they tried to write it in such a way that it looked like it was limiting our power, which it does not. And again, our system is created to be standardized, not to be innovative. So, and any innovation is largely going to be tech-based and data-driven, especially for those in the rural area that don't have private schools or charter schools in their towns. Their only choices will be that which is available through tech, and the portfolio will end up being a tech-based, data-driven system as well, like a digital wallet, which is highly problematic for many conservatives. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Klein. Member Lear.
I want to speak to this substitute motion with 3 short points. First of all, I thought one of Member Earl's comments was very telling to me. They have been working on it for 2 years. That's one of my objections. It's not hurt feelings, not arrogance. It's saying that if we see all of the assignments for the State Board of Education, there should have been collaboration, cooperation, so that the State Board could be effective and do what it was directed to do. Secondly, as the first motion is written, which says we oppose this as written, that definitely still leaves the door open to discussion. Even at the 11th hour, even though we've been made assignments with no consultation, as written suggests that if a different, substantially and I won't even say that. If a different sub comes forward, the board could vote again and perhaps take a different position. Thirdly, I think it sends a very unfortunate and weak message for the constitutional body that oversees the public education system to see all other education entities who really have no constitutional authority, take a position boldly, bravely, thoughtfully, and the state board says, nah, we'll just sit here and kind of think about it. So I feel like as a board member, we need to speak and use our constitutional authority effectively.
Thank you, Member Lear. Member Bogus.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak in opposition to the motion. I have read this many times, and I would just like to acknowledge that I am a public school teacher, and I also have children like Member Wood who did not fit in that system, and we utilized the choice readily available in this state to ensure that our children and our family had an education that was a fit for them. And I have read this many times, and though I support continuing the conversation, this bill, as it is written, cannot be amended into good public policy, in my opinion, and as such, I would speak against the motion.
Thank you, Member Bogus. Vice Chair Hart.
Yeah, I see very little space. I think like Member Lear said, I feel between the two motions, the one says we don't support basically as it's written, which obviously if you're including that clause, then if it was changed, it might be different. It implies that. The other motion is not to make a decision until we know what kinds of changes are being made, because we understand that they are making changes. And I've heard directly that they're making changes. What bothers me is that we even have to say that in the first place. The process, leaves a lot to be desired. I hope that our teachers are not trying to use this bill as an example of good government, because I'm not sure how that would work out. Suspending the rules, moving it so quickly, that just limits debate, and we probably wouldn't have to have these conversations that we're having now. However, I also understand why they felt they need to do it that way, because our reaction in public ed is to say, no, we can't when it comes to innovation. And we are comfortable with the status quo, and we sit on some statistics and we say 90% or over 90% choose their local school. Well, sure, why? Probably because that's what they're closest to. Yes, a lot of people love their local school, but that doesn't mean local schools can't get better. It's just, there's a lot of causation made instead of correlation. And then when innovations are brought to us, it feels like moving a mountain. And it shouldn't, because the world is changing. There's lots of different ways to educate students. There's students and families are extremely diverse. And we're not really coming to the table in public ed except to say we can't, in my opinion, far too often. So I understand why the legislative body would feel that they need to move things quickly. However, it's still not a good process, and it's still not what we know and believe about representative government. And for that reason, and the fact that we would have to make rules about a bill that we have serious concerns over, I don't see how we wouldn't be held accountable for those rules with the bill as it's written currently. Now, whether that means no support as currently written, or not voting until we hear what kinds of adjustments are being made, I don't know. I know that that question could have been answered had some of our concerns been addressed. If there were bills that they say, oh, we're getting to innovation in public school. We're looking at accountability. We're looking at these things. Well, if that's true, why not number those bills? Why not get them out there now? Why say they're coming later? So there's not much difference to me between the two motions, but clearly there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. So I'm not speaking for any of those motions. I think I'm just expressing a little dismay on both sides, quite frankly.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hart. Member Davis, I'll just remind members, we have until 9 o'clock, so we may not be able to come back to those who've already spoken once. We want to make sure everybody has an opportunity and try to keep it concise so we can move to votes. But Member Davis.
Thank you. I think that was a very good point. We have moved for innovative practices and they haven't been picked up in legislative committees. So hopefully those will come, but we have done some things on our own without the legislature. Letters training in the science of reading, for example, across the state of Utah is making a huge impact on our literacy understanding and teaching. So, you know, I do see what, I do hear the conversation and how there are different sides to the prism of the arguments for sure. I just want to say that, again, to reiterate that, you know, not wanting to table or stay neutral on the position does not mean that you don't support choice. And again, we've heard from a lot of parents. As a parent, I've had my students in district schools. My oldest also participated in online private school and in technical college. And my daughter went to her neighborhood elementary school, and then for music classes went to the private school in our city. I think we do have choices and options available, and I support that. Again, I reiterate that. I do not support the motion to maintain a position of neutrality at this time because I did advocate for that last Thursday and then regretted it when the bill was fast-tracked because I felt like we lost an opportunity to have any kind of voice in what was happening with the bill, especially with all of these unanswered questions and bits all over the bill. So I would speak against the motion and say that I today would oppose, but if major changes to fix or clean up this bill were made, we have another meeting on Thursday. And we have another meeting the next Thursday. So we certainly could revisit that if enough were changed. Perhaps Member Bogus is right that that is not going to be a possibility. But we certainly have opportunities if it is.
Thank you, Member Davis. Member Straight, if we've got something new.
Yes, thank you.
Go for it.
So one of the main comments is about innovation and you know, as I look around, I've participated in the last year on a civics group, and we're on a second round of grants as a result of funding from the legislature last year.
We look straight. Is this to the motion to substitute, or excuse me, the substitute motion to?
Yeah.
Hold?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, and I look on the charter side, I see Roots and New Ames and Spectrum and others. On the district side, in the district I serve, I see the Catalyst Center in Davis County, the South Clearfield Elementary and Sunburst Elementary, who are doing amazingly innovative things. So I think the time to say that students don't have choice, because I believe in choice. In fact, the superintendent of Nebo wrote down a list of 11 specific ways in which students have choice. I am a conservative, I am a Republican, I believe in choice, and we have choice, and I call the motion. I call the question.
Question's been called. I don't hear a second. Second from Board Member Lear. I think we proceed to the vote then, correct? So members in favor of calling the question, please raise your hands. We'll do a count of the votes. Keep them up for a moment if you can. Roll call. I'm sorry, we do need to do a roll call vote. My apologies. We're mixed here, so let's start here. Member Bogus. Correct. Yes. Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Davis.
Yes, Chair.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Member Green.
Yes.
Member Hart.
No.
Member Hymas. Member Carey.
No.
Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Moss is a no. Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Reel.
Yes.
Straight.
Yes.
Member Wood.
Yes.
Okay, that's motion passes. The question's been called. The motion before the board is that the board maintains a position of neutrality on HB. Oh. Here we go. Motion before the board is that the board maintains a position of neutrality on HB 215 and directs staff to work with the sponsors of HB 215. Almost got there. Got a ghost in the machine for a minute here. Okay, let me try that one more time. Motion before the board is the substitute motion from Vice Chair Earl that the board maintains a position of neutrality on HB 215 and directs staff to work with the sponsors of HB 215 to address institutional concerns in implementation. As we're hybrid, we will do the roll call vote. Member Bogus. Member Booth.
No.
Member Klein.
No.
Member Davis.
No.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Member Green.
Yes.
Member Hart.
No.
Member Hymas. Member Carey.
Yes.
Member Lear.
No.
Member Moss is a yes. Member Norton.
No.
Member Reel. Member Straight.
No.
Member Wood.
No.
That motion fails. The vote is 11-4. All right, with that motion failing, we are back to the original motion for further discussion, which was that the board opposes third substitute HB 215 as currently written. And we've got about 20 minutes further discussion to that motion. And I think the order I show is, and again, please limit your comments to things that haven't been raised. We're back to the original motion. We had some pretty in-depth discussion on that. So if there are new points to add, please feel free, but we do want to give time for all those who haven't weighed in and then time for a vote. So let's see. Our order is, look right?
It's me.
I think.
Come on, Jim. It's
All right,
me.
we got public one ahead of you. That may or may not be somebody, so
I
just
thought-
let's make sure. Okay, I think it is Member Lear, then Member Bogus, then Member Hymas.
And we all have had a chance to comment. With that, I call the question on the motion number 1.
Is there a second?
Second.
So that's, the motion is to call the question on motion number 1. Member Bogus.
Yes.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Davis.
Yes.
Member Earl.
No.
Member Green.
No.
Member Hart.
No.
Member Hymas. Member Carey.
No.
Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Moss is a no. Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Reel.
Yes.
Member Straight.
Yes.
And Member Wood.
Yes.
That motion passes. The vote count is by a vote of 9-6. That motion passes. I believe that concludes,
Oh, no, no,
Nope.
no, no, no.
excuse
no.
me,
The vote on the motion?
That was,
I thought that was the final motion. So,
Okay, we'll just,
um,
ahead.
That's the, there's,
well,
now,
that
was
is the final motion.
That was the call question.
Now we got it.
We called the question.
I'm
That was
sorry.
called the
Vote on the
question.
no, that was a vote on the motion, wasn't
It
it?
was the vote on the motion, yes.
motion to
Hold on,
call the
let's, hold on,
question.
hold on, let's
All
ask
right,
our
all right.
It
parliamentarian.
was calling the question.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
The vote.
I was with you, Member Larry. I thought we were there. Okay. Motion on the floor then is that the board opposes third substitute HB 215 as currently written. Member, start at the end this time? Is that what you're,
Yeah, go back.
Sure.
do we alternate, Sybil?
Yeah.
Is that okay, let's start with Member Wood.
Yes.
Member Straight.
Yes.
Member Reel.
Yes.
Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Moss is a no. Member Lear.
Yes.
Member Carey.
No.
Member Hymus.
No.
Member Hart.
Yes.
Member Green.
No.
Member Earl.
No.
Member Davis.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Booth.
Yes.
Member Bogus.
Yes.
That motion passes by a vote of 10 to 5.
And I do have one more motion, Chair, when you're ready.
This related to HB 215?
Yes, it is.
This in order, is it motion to take action on the bill?
It is related to that closely.
Is that in order, parliamentarian? Well, let's hear it for ruling by
Okay.
the parliamentarian
it's
as to whether
relative-
it's
relevant
related
or
enough
not.
to be falling within the notice
Well,
in the
it's,
agenda.
an
So
omnibus motion. How's that?
please present and we'll ask the parliamentarian to weigh in.
The board directs, my motion is, Chair, that the board directs board leadership in collaboration with at least one additional member of the board who voted with the majority to oppose the bill, to send a letter by noon today from the board to the Utah State Legislature explaining the majority position of the board on HB 215 sub 3.
Is there a second? Is that proper?
Second.
Appropriate motion related to sufficiently to the agenda items? Yes. Okay.
Second.
Ruling is yes. There's been a second. Discussion to the motion, which is that the board directs board leadership in collaboration with at least one other member of the board who voted with the majority to oppose the bill to send a letter by noon today from the board to the Utah Legislature explaining the majority position of the board on HB 215, third substitute. And I'll speak to that.
Can I speak to it first?
I'm sorry. Yes, the maker first.
Thank you. This motion is exactly what it says. And in addition, we do have a draft letter prepared. I have a draft letter prepared that has been reworked by staff. And I think that would make it pretty easy to start with and be able to meet that timeline.
All right. I do wish to speak to that before somebody calls the question. We've had a closely divided vote. It's 10 to 5. There are double those in the majority. Sorry? Okay, all right. And so I didn't have an opportunity to speak to the underlying motion. I'd like to do that briefly and then also address this because it relates to the opportunity for board members to speak. And I think we've done that. I think we arranged this meeting on short notice to make sure everybody could speak. We had 5 votes against. I think that absolutely needs to be included in any communication to the legislature. This is a controversial subject, and I'm in favor of the bill with the problems that it has. I'm in favor of continuing to speak with our legislative sponsors to address especially the elements of the bill that affect us. USBE has been tasked with a large number of things to do. We have been working to advocate for those items to be addressed since the bill went through the House vote on Friday. And we've received positive feedback about their willingness to engage. I'd like to make sure they do understand that some of us have a different position than the majority. That's an important part of our board proceedings. And so I'm not in favor of a letter that unilaterally adopts the position only of those who voted in favor. So I will bring an amendment in a motion in a moment, but let me just say the reasons that I would be in favor of something so controversial as 215. we have a very solemn trust from parents. We exercise a form of indirect accountability to provide education for the students of our parents in this state. The parents retain the right and occasionally use it to exercise direct accountability over the education of their children. And parents have spoken in favor of this bill. Our system is a great one. I think you have all heard me say that all my 5 kids have gone through our district schools, and I love those schools. There was a fairly lengthy and significant debate in the House, and we heard stories, and I've heard those stories from some from whom it does not fit. It doesn't work. And this gives them an outlet, and I think it's important. The question of accountability is one in which I think we have an obligation to trust parents to make those decisions about what education works best for their kids. On the other side of that debate, there are concerns about government regulation and strings. Does this unduly tie either an organization or a student? I think that's another area where we can trust the parents. Parents empower us to do our work, but they are ultimately the best guarantors and guides for their students' education. They've spoken through their elected representatives, and I think we need to respect that. We do have a lot of items that relate to what we do as an institution to implement this. And so those are areas where I would like to continue the conversation. I want to send a clear message that some of us are in support of continuing that conversation. We did not vote to oppose the bill, and so I'll make an amendment that propose an amendment that the letter explaining the majority position be amended to say, and minority position of the board on HB 215, third substitute. Second. Been a motion, a second. Any discussion to, yes, a motion to amend and a second. Any discussion to that motion to amend? Member Bogus, is your light on for this?
Yes, if I may.
Please.
There has been much controversy in the past few years about the quote official USBE position. And it would be my understanding that the board just entered an official position and now we're trying to undermine that official position with caveats. And I would just ask if as board members we think that's appropriate. And then just to speak to the motion in general, while many of us have voted in favor of opposing this bill, it's very clear in this room that we do so for very different reasons. And so should the letter be sent and the board vote in favor of that, I would like that to be articulated very clearly that this is a bipartisan opposition for very different reasons, and that be clarified for the representatives in the legislature to understand.
Member Straight.
I appreciate that, and I agree. I'm concerned about the perception that you speak on behalf of parents. I've spoke to many parents. I've spoke to many stakeholders, including parents, and they have a different take. Last year, we had a motion in front of the board to ask the governor to veto the change in the income from education fund to the income tax fund. Within that, Chair Huntsman specifically stated that he was not going to vote for that, but if the board voted on behalf of that, then he would speak on behalf of the board. I have a real problem of leadership saying that they're going to speak outside of the view of the board. This is an official position, and we need to speak in behalf of the board's position, not your personal position when you serve as a leader within this organization.
Thank you, Member Straight. I'll respond in a moment, but others with lights on, Member Lear. We have Lear, Earl, and now we have Real. So we're a mess.
A lot
Thank
of the
you.
same values.
Member
It's a
Earl.
lot of the same vowels. I was going to say values, but that would be Freudian. I have to speak against this motion for the very similar reasons to Member Straight. We've struggled with this leadership role since I've watched the board for 40 years, more so in the last 20. But I agree that the leadership was elected and agreed that they would support the majority position of the board. The draft letter I said that I have is absolutely subject to being amended or changed. There's nothing sacred about it. It's a starting place. I think the point that Member Bogus made also reflects most of what you're saying, Chair, that there are many different reasons that the board, in the majority, voted to oppose the bill. And that's the majority position of the board. I've never in my time heard a chair say, we want to make sure the minority position is heard. The majority position of the board is the official position of the board. And it's hard to hold all board members to that if that's not the message of the chair. So I would oppose your motion, the chair's motion, but also say that the letter could, in my mind, could say that there were various reasons for the majority position of the board. And I think that's fair.
Thank you both. I'll respond this way. The majority position of the board is the majority position. Our leadership will support it, as we always do. This goes beyond that into editorializing, and there's already been some editorializing in the press. If that editorializing, which is supplemental to the actual board vote, goes into effect, I think the opinion of all members should be respected. I would frankly vote against the underlying motion. I think we've taken a vote. It's very difficult to corral all the different opinions that were expressed on either side. I think there's no need for us to express in editorializing what was just done. The vote's clear. We as leadership will stand behind it. Let there be no question about that. We always do. So I'm against the idea of editorializing beyond our official vote. And if we do that, I think all members should be included in that. So that's my position. I think we have one more. So I would speak against the underlying motion, but in favor of this if we're going to do anything. Member Klein.
I would speak in favor of the letter being sent, and as I would concur with Member Bogus on explaining that the majority voted in the majority, but for different reasons. And to her point, as far as I would like to, if we're going to take this position of, putting forward the minority position, I would like that to be retroactive so that on all the other things I disagreed with, I can explain and have my position presented as well.
Thank you, Member Klein. Back to me to sum up. Sorry, do we have others? Member Hart, excuse me. Vice Chair Hart.
I'm actually really concerned about the underlying motion, but I need to speak to the amendment, I suppose. I'm just not sure, thinking pragmatically, what that letter is going to look like and how we would hammer that out. And I do know for certain that our concerns and list of issues was received by the bill sponsors. And after that, I even had I had an almost instantaneous call from one of the bill sponsors. And I am confident that our position has been made. I am also fairly confident that there's a number of people that are watching this currently and have followed this discussion. I don't see the need for a term paper about our position. Again, I'm actually speaking against both the motion and the submotion or amendment, sorry.
Thank you. Member Carey.
Hi, Chair Moss, just a quick point of information. What board rule or board policy, and maybe this is for Attorney Quisenberry, what board rule or board policy would prohibit the inclusion of the minority position or any provision that leadership would want to include or exclude from the letter?
A question, AG Quisenberry. He's with us online. I'm not sure if that's something that you can answer or guide us on.
Chair, yeah, Brian Questenberry here, counsel for the board. I'm not aware, member Carey, of any bylaw or policy that's on this point.
All right.
With
I-
that, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, follow up.
With that, Chair, I would just, if there's no particular policy or board rule, I don't know if it would be a reason for your motion or substitute motion for the inclusion of the minority position. It seems like the board is empowered to include or exclude whatever it chooses in the letter to the legislature. That's all.
All right, thank you. I'll sum up as the maker. I see no reason for anything more than the board voted and the prevailing vote was X to support with the language of the bill. So if this amendment passes, it would clearly state these are, there was also a minority, but they lost. The official position of the board is the majority position. So this amendment is basically a motion against in editorializing beyond communication of the fact that the motion passed. So with that, unless Member Davis, did you have a
Yeah,
motion?
I mean, I don't even know where we're at now on the amendment, but I'd speak against the amendment. We just, I guess if you want to do that, it might be your prerogative. I think under the chair supporting board positions and bylaws, it does say something about that, but I can't remember exactly what it says. But I feel like when you go to the legislature and say, this is the board's position, not everyone voted this way, or you write a letter to the legislature, this is the board position, but some of us felt this way. It just weakens the strength of the board in general. And this is a public record. People can go back and listen. I really don't have a problem, I guess, with the whole link to the meeting being included in the letter, and people can listen to it. They probably won't have time before 2:00, but they might be able to listen to some and hear everybody's opinion. And I think by not saying it was a unanimous vote, we're not, by not including that in the letter, it pretty much is obvious that not everybody voted if you don't say this was passed unanimously by our board.
Thank you. Let's go back to a vote. And again, to be clear, the only reason for the amendment is that I don't think it's necessary to say anything beyond our board voted and this is the result. If we're going to editorialize extraneously about the majority, then we might mention that losing side also expressed the following. So the motion before the board, the amendment before the board, is that the board amend Member Lear's motion to add that the letter include the minority position on third sub HB 215 in addition to the majority position of the board. So back to the top of the alphabet, Member Bogus. You can always abstain. Member Booth.
No.
Member Klein.
No.
Member Davis.
No.
Member Earl.
Yes.
Member Green.
No.
Member Hart.
No.
Member Hymas. Member Carey.
No.
Member Lear.
No.
Member Moss, yes. Member Norton.
No.
Member, did we
Oh,
lose
she
Member
is.
Norton? Okay.
No.
Member Reel. Member Straight.
No.
And Member Wood.
No.
Okay. Back to the original motion, which is that the board directs board leadership in collaboration with at least one other member of the board who voted with the majority to oppose the bill to send a letter by noon today from the board to the Utah legislature explaining the majority position of the board on HB 215, third substitute.
Chair, point of clarification.
Yes.
We have sent the letter that Deputy Stallings put together with all of our concerns from Thursday. They have seen that and have all of, was that like 6 pages worth of concerns?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Further
Lear?
clarification to that, Chair. That was not necessarily in letter form or as a, it was more of an informational piece, I thought. Is that right? Deputy Stallings?
Deputy Stallings.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. It was not in letter form. It was not very formal. It just described the comments. And then I sent an email just and as well to the sponsors.
Can I seek a point of clarification?
Yes.
are we sending that information with the vote? Or is it something more than that? Yeah. Board Member Lear?
I'm not understanding your.
My
I'm not
question is, if
understanding.
we're sending the information we had with today's vote to
And
the legislature.
That's something that's already been sent. What this motion is to send a letter that goes on the record to say, here's the board's vote, and a short letter, I didn't put that in the motion, but a short letter that said, here's the board's position, and
Okay.
sent from leadership memorializing that event.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right, Member Hymus.
I was gonna, are we speaking to the motion?
Yes.
I'd like to just speak against the motion. I don't think it's necessary or helpful, nor do I want to set a precedence, as has been mentioned, for every time we take a position on anything that we vote for. I'm sure the legislature knows what's happening. They probably are aware of this meeting, right? I'm right. I'm sure that they know what's going on and our position. So, again, speaking against the motion.
Thank you, Member Hymus. Member Davis, is your light on for?
Yeah, I mean, when organizations take a formal position on something pretty big, they typically give a public statement, send a letter, communicate the position. That's historically accurate.
Member Hart? Sorry.
Yes, I speak against the motion. We're already preparing a press release, which is normal operating procedure. I think to send a letter is extraneous, not necessary, and a precedent. I believe that they have the information that they need, which is exactly the answers that we need in order to feel comfortable with many elements of the bill. I don't see any reason to send additional correspondence besides keeping the focus on the information that we would need in order to do our job that is outlined in the bill. So I think it's extra, I think it's not necessary, and I think the press release can stand on its own.
All right, back to, we are over time, but briefly, Member Bogus, Member Davis?
I guess I would just like to speak in a position of neutrality. My question would be, there's already a public discourse problem in this state between the board and the legislature and the board and the public. And if this letter does not prove to be prudent in facilitating positive discourse, I would ask that we question whether or not it's necessary and just think about that, because we do have discourse issues. It's apparent, it's real, it's palpable. And if the position is made through a press release, my question is this letter necessary? It's just a question.
Thank you. Member Davis?
Can we see the press release? Is it drafted? And maybe we could send that to senators before the 2 o'clock vote by noon, if that's.
I would support that.
My understanding is a draft is, sorry, Member Earl, did you have a comment?
Does Kelsey have a draft ready?
Well,
Yes.
yeah, I was going to say, I don't know are we going to want to, I don't know about the rest of you. I was supposed to be somewhere a while ago, but got a sub for that. But I don't know that we're going to hammer it out right here. Does that make sense? So I think if, however that needs to be, I think we've got to vote. Are we going to do the press release? And then if someone wants to,
Follow
I
up,
don't know how
Chair.
you want to handle that.
So the press release has been prepared. The question is whether we're also going to do a letter. And the question from Member Davis?
Can we see the press release? Perhaps that could be in lieu of a letter and just at least sent to senators by noon so they know the decision we made for their 2 o'clock vote.
Is that available?
Not that I think it would.
Yeah, would you like to, if you'd like to share it, I think board members would like to see what's already been prepared. Deputy Stallings?
Thank you. I just wanted to share something just as an example of what we have done in the past to communicate the board's position. Last year when the state board opposed, and I don't remember the bill number, but it was the scholarship or bill last year, the board leadership did ask me to send an email to the full House as it was about to be debated on the House floor, I did send an email just stating the position of the board that they took on the bill. And so that is just another compromise or opportunity. Either I could send that, Chair Moss could send that, but I think what I'm hearing is there's an intent or a request to let the full legislature, and whether we do that just to the Senate now or to the full legislature, we have sent an email to the full legislature on other bills in the past, and they have usually either come from me on behalf of the board, or I think one time we had the Chair Huntsman sent one on behalf of the board.
Thank you. So is this what was prepared yesterday or based on today?
Point of, can we get some clarification?
Oh.
Sorry, are we voting on this? What do we?
This is being raised as to see the backup language. This has not been reviewed or approved by board leadership, so.
The concern I have with even looking over this is we're voting to look at a letter or to give a letter, which we're not going to vote on. We're just saying write a letter. And then now we're going to look over this as a board and decide as a board, do we want this to go out? Right? Do we want a public statement? Do we want a letter? What do we want here? Like, is this part of our process, or are we just going to vote to?
I think the normal, as I understand it, would be to indicate what the motion was and the fact that it passed and the vote.
Brandy's been trying
And
to.
the press release. Member Booth.
Thank you, Chair. I may be old school, but clear and courteous communication has always been something that I was taught by my mother as a child. And I still think it works, even though I'm 72 years old. I still like to communicate. A press release is a press release, and that's great. But that's not personal to the people who in the legislature who have invested a great deal of time and effort, as we have also invested. And good people communicating courteously through a written form that's as acceptable as a letter, I can't see that being a negative thing. That may be an opportunity to express gratitude along with the position of the board. That's my old-fashioned idea. Thank you.
All right, I think we've seen the press release. The motion, I think, unless people have further discussion to the motion is whether to direct the letter as described.
Can we have
Final comments on that
Are you
motion?
cutting? Oh,
Sorry?
okay.
just a point of order? Those of us online cannot see what the letter says. Can we just read
It's
through
the
it really
press
fast?
We don't have, Member Klein, there's been no letter language. What was presented was a press release.
Sorry, the press release.
That's been in the works, has not been approved, but that's part of the communication process. So I don't know if there's a way to share that where folks online can see it. Sorry?
Just read it.
No, it was just for informational purposes. So I think we are over time.
I have a second.
And I think we're probably ready for, unless we have a final comment to the motion.
I move that board
And back to-
leadership, are you coming to me?
I think so, and then back to Member Lear. Member Lear's motion
Yeah.
is pending, and so
I have a
Member
substitute
Davis.
motion. I
Okay.
move that board leadership send the press release that we just saw to senators to communicate the vote of the board by noon today.
In the form, and clarification, in the form of a letter?
Just an email that says, a kind, as Brandy Booth says, just thank you for your service. The board took this position on an issue you're going to be voting on today. Here's the press release. The whole legislature's fine, but senators.
Substitute motion is before the board. Is there a second? Discussion to that motion to send the press release, which I think we had some opportunity to review, but has not been finalized. So if there's no, Member Lear, did you have
I do
comment to
that
this
motion.
motion?
I will vote for this motion in the spirit of compromise. I feel like that it is more appropriate to send I'm a lawyer. I memorialize what happens. Obviously, another lawyer takes a different position, so that's an important thing to notice also. But I think you memorialize what has been done in a very summary way. I wasn't expressing a need to have 6 or 8 pages the way we were very well served by Deputy Stallings. But I will vote for this in the spirit of compromise, with the opportunity and the trust that the leadership will share the majority position of the board.
Which
Thank
I
you.
understand was in the position. So yes,
was, very much.
Member Lear.
Very
Real.
Thank
I knew
you.
we'd-
I just to comment on the motion, I support this, but I also hope that we can see leadership support of what the board spoke on today and fighting and working with the legislature and being communicative with the board members on your plans to get this bill amended or look for ways for more clarity, whatever it may be. It feels very powerless to know that it is already on its way without input from the State Board of Education.
Thank you, Member Real, and I'll just note that leadership spent the weekend presenting precisely those concerns that were raised by this body, both in our meeting and by staff. So we will continue to do that. The majority has spoken. We will respect that. We'll honor that. We'll continue to advocate for all the funding priorities we've been working so hard to frame up for the legislature. So appreciate the input, and we will definitely be doing that. Let's vote then on the underlying motion, which is, the substitute motion is that the board requests board leadership to send the board's press release via email to the full legislature today. That's been seconded and debated. So board members vote in reverse. Let's see, we're back to reverse order, I believe. Member Wood.
Yes.
Member Straight.
Yes.
Member Reel. Yes. Member Norton.
Yes.
Member Moss is a yes. Member Lear. Yes. Member Carey.
No.
Member Hymas. Yes. Member Hart.
Yes.
Member Green.
Yes.
Member Earl. Yes. Member Davis.
Yes.
Member Klein.
Yes.
Member Booth.
Yes.
And Member Bogus. Okay, that motion passes. That substitute replaces the original motion. So, final motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Motion is unanimous. Thank you, board members. Thank you, public, for joining us for your comments. We are